I am Émile Guimet, the founder of the Musée Guimet in Paris, where Lady McLeod gave her first performance as Mata Hari. My friend Georges Dupac introduced me to the delights of Mata Hari's wonderful and exotic stage performances. He telephoned me at the museum one day in January and told me of a woman he had met while filing a story, a woman who wanted to be an Oriental dancer. I thought it a marvellous idea. It was to the Perroquet Bleu in Rue Chaptal, just off the Place Pigalle, that George took me on the night of 4th of February 1905. It was hardly the most auspicious venue for a professional debut. A scantily dressed woman pushed open the door and motioned us inside. She pointed the way down a rickety staircase. The fact that there was no entrance fee didn't augur well, but George slipped her a franc piece in any case. We found a table near the back of a dark room. There were wooden shafts and beams throughout, supporting a warped roof. In front of us were 10 or 12 round wooden tables like ours, and in front of those was a small dais, barely a metre away and edged with red curtains. The place was nearly full and lively, with the expectant shouts of men waiting for the night's entertainment. The compere appeared and announced, "Please welcome a sensational new dancer from the Orient, Lady McLeod." The audience cheered in anticipation, and George sat upright in his chair to get a better view. When she came onto the stage, with her eyes cast down and only the merest hint of a smile on her lips, the audience settled down and everyone was agog. She was dressed in a brassiere, trimmed with gold, and a short gold sarong, over which fell a transparent veil. Her black hair hung loosely, held in place by a plain hairband. She wore wooden clogs, which were similar to ones worn by the geishas in northern Japan, which must have come from her native Holland. Her attire was simple, drab even. She stood looking out towards a spot somewhere over and behind the audience. Her face was as still as a winter's pond, as though she had done this 1,000 times before. Some music started up off stage, wailing dervish-style music, and she began a series of slow turns and twirls, always extending her arms upwards and outwards, always holding her head steady. Several times she remained crouching on the floor with her back to us, and on the last such crouch she cast aside her veil and swirled around to reveal that she was naked, except for the brassiere. The crowd of men rose to their feet, clapping and whistling in appreciation. My first reaction was of immense excitement and invigoration. Here was a woman who had interpreted most perfectly the slow, seductive dances of the bayadère. I'd never seen it done so well before, indeed. I'd never seen it done before. George and I sat talking our way through the acrobats and a dismal chanteuse, or rather, I talked and George listened. I told him of the plans and projects I had already envisaged off the top of my head. I imagined her dancing to audiences of thousands across Europe. I was so immersed in my thoughts that I did not notice Lady McLeod suddenly materialising at our table. She was dressed in the plainest of clothes. We stood up and George introduced us. Her dark eyes looked at me. What a sweet smile she had. I told her that she had a great future, that she was perfect. I'm afraid I rambled on somewhat about the collection of Oriental jewellery and costume that I have in my museum, how I could imagine her dressed in those fine robes and shiny stones, and she smiled and listened patiently. Then I remembered my sole concern, that she must have a more exotic sobriquet. I told her it didn't matter if her stage name was Malay, Siamese or Mandarin. It just had to be foreign and exotic sounding. After a kind of verbal tit-for-tat, we came up with an expression she'd learnt when she was ill with typhoid in the Indies. Mata Hari, which means eye of the morning, or dawn. I thought it perfect, and much to my delight, she agreed. Mata Hari performed first under her new name on the 13th of March at the Museum Rotunda. The journalist Edouard Lepage was there. Suddenly, Mata Hari appears, the eye of the day, the glorious sun, the sacred Bayadere, whom only the priests and the gods claim to have seen nude. She is tall and slim and supple like an unrolled serpent, which is hypnotized by the snake charmer's flute. Her flexible body at times becomes one with the undulating flames, to stiffen suddenly in the midst of her contortions, like the flaming blade of a grease. Then, with a brutal gesture, Mata Hari rips off her jewels, tears her veils. She throws away the ornaments that cover her breasts. And naked, her body seems to lengthen way up into the shadows. Her outstretched arms lift her on the very tip of her toes. She staggers, beats the empty airs with her shattered arms, whips the night with her long, heavy hair, and falls